Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this afternoon's panel. It's terrific to hear so much chatter. It sounds like it's been a great 3 days, an opportunity to catch up, connect and share ideas. I'm conscious that day 3 of a conference, you've already been saturated with a lot of ideas and thoughts and things like that. So I'll just pay a little bit of acknowledgement before we get started that you're sticking at it and continuing to engage with what I hope will be a really fascinating panel this afternoon. So my name's Harry Greenwell. I'm the Acting Managing Director of the Australian Centre for Evaluation at the Australian Treasury. It's a real pleasure to be here and be part of this panel discussion. I'm sure that it's been acknowledged before, but I would like to also add my acknowledgement of the lands that we're holding this panel discussion on this afternoon. Pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land, the Ngunnawal people, pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and to others in the community who have a connection to the lands of this region. So this is not about me, this is about the panellists, but just to give you a brief introduction to what we're going to be talking about this afternoon, Iterating for Impact, how A/B testing improves programs in real time. This is a topic that's of great interest to the Australian Centre for Evaluation, or the AAC as we like to call ourselves, and we do come out with some terrible puns at times too, so if you hear me sort of drop in an ACE up your sleeve or something like that, just groan appreciatively and move on. But it's a topic of great interest to us because while our overall mission is to improve the volume, quality and use of evaluation in all its forms across the Australian government, which means a whole range of different methods and approaches, we are particularly interested in questions about impact and effectiveness, whether something's worked and if so by how much. And when we look at that question, we grapple with the challenge of establishing causality, and we see randomisation and randomised trials as an important tool in trying to tackle this tricky question of causality. We recognise there's a lot more to evaluation than just questions about impact and effectiveness. We're strong proponents of using mixed methods approaches to answer a range of different evaluation questions, but that question about how much is something working is so central, especially for economics wonks in the Treasury Department who are ultimately sort of looking at budget decision making. So this topic is particularly interesting to us, and I'm very excited to be chairing this panel. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce each of the speakers now, and then I'll pass to them one by one as we go through their presentations. They've got a lot to cover, and I think the best way to get through all the material is we're just going to go through the 3 presentations and we're going to cover questions at the end. So what I'm going to ask you to do is if you've got some great questions from Claire's presentation, which is going to come first, make a note of them so that we can come back to them at the end, even while you're being wowed by Azeez and Ben. So first of all, we're going to have Claire Cullen, who is the Head of Research and Innovation at Youth Impact, a Botswana headquartered organisation committed to scaling up evidence-based programs for youth. She's also a Principal Investigator at Oxford University's What Works Hub for Global Education. Ben Tan is the Director of the Right Fit Evidence Unit with Innovations for Poverty Action. Ben oversees advisory engagements for partners who want to better use evidence and data for learning and improvement. He's currently leading monitoring, evaluation and learning advisory engagements for projects in economic livelihoods, education and early childhood and development in East Africa and Southeast Asia. And we've now got Azeez Gupta online, who is a social entrepreneur and co-founder of Rocket Learning, one of India's largest early childhood development non-profits, impacting 4 million low-income children in India. He also serves on the Indian government's and Karnataka state's early childhood care and education task forces and has served on working groups with UNICEF as well. So please join me in welcoming our 3 panellists this afternoon. And I'm going to pass first to Claire.
Great, thank you so much. Awesome, and slides coming. No worries. Hi everyone, nice to meet you. So as Harry said, I'm Claire Cullen. I'm the head of research at Youth Impact, which is a Botswana-founded and headquartered organization founded in 2014 to scale up evidence-based programs to youth. So we work in primary and secondary schools across the country to scale up programs where there's a lot of rigorous evidence showing that it's effective across contexts, implementer types. And we also now work in India and Philippines, South Africa, Namibia, and other countries to kind of help scale up evidence-based programs in other contexts. So today I'm going to be presenting a paper that we've recently put out with Noam Angras, who was on the keynote yesterday, who really nicely set this up, and Jannica Maggot, and the paper is called Cheaper and More Effective by the Dozen, Evidence from 12 A/B Tests Optimizing Tutoring for Scale. So this is kind of like a nice example. Ben will give a really nice framework. Azeez sharing more examples from another organization, but a nice tangible example of how once you've done a lot of randomized control trials, or you're really confident that an intervention is effective, you've replicated it, and you're taking it to scale, and you want to avoid this voltage drop, you actually want it to get better and better over time. This is a nice practical example of how we've done that. Ooh, I have to turn it on. Hey, perfect. Good one. Great. So as I kind of shared, Youth Impact is really focused on youth. It's in the name. Also in the DNA is evidence. And then we're also always scaling up with governments. So just as a bit of a starting point, why are we thinking about A/B testing in social programs? It's helpful to keep in mind the starting point. So while there is growing robust evidence on what works, it is still rare to rigorously evaluate programs before you're scaling up in the social sector. So in the UK, they estimate maybe 10% of programs are rigorously evaluated, and even fewer of those measure cost effectiveness. There is this growing body of evidence on these small stage or these early randomized control trials, but as these are taken, there's growing evidence that there is a bit of a voltage drop. And this is not just in education, which I'll be mostly talking about today, it's also across sectors. So how do we solve this problem? How do we go from rigorous evidence in a small efficacy pilot, maybe a randomized control trial in one context, and take it to scale? We need more and faster evidence. And A/B testing is one tool that's widely used in the tech sector to kind of optimize and make programs get better and better over time. So for example, in A/B testing, we're all watching Netflix or using Google, and these organizations are using 10,000 simultaneous experiments at any point in time, and they estimate that they get revenue growth of 10 to 25% each year. So it just shows the massive potential of this to improve outcomes. So A/B testing is done by different organizations who interpret it slightly differently. So let me just describe to you how we are interpreting it and describing it. We have some principles that we've called the 3 R's. So A/B testing is rigorous. So like randomized control trials, you're doing a coin flip, you're randomizing people or clinics or schools into group A or group B. And because it's randomized, that means any difference in outcomes is causal. But different to randomized control trials, it's rapid. So results are turned around ideally within weeks. It's designed for real live decision making. So you find something out and then the next week you're changing a program based on that information. And so that means it does need to use these short-term outcomes, or what we call golden indicators. So you're finding an outcome that changes fast enough, but it's also meaningful enough to make a decision. And so it really does need to be this rapid cadence. It's also regular. So A/B testing is kind of this inbuilt monitoring and evaluation system. You know data is flowing in at a high cadence, and you know that you're going to be running multiple sequential A/B tests so that you can follow a learning agenda, discover something new, follow it in a new direction. And unlike this big high stakes randomized control trial where everything hinges on this thing that you might learn in 3 years, you're just learning as you go. It's probably measuring cheaper, shorter, lighter proxy indicators, but you're learning fast. So what does this look like? So what is an A/B test? So for example, in this example I'll be sharing a lot more about, it's a program that's delivered at households. It's a tutoring program, and so you have a sample of households, and you randomly assign half of them to get the status quo standard version of the program, And the second group gets randomly assigned to group B, which gets a slightly modified version of the program. So it might be like slightly juiced up, you're adding something you think is good, and then you come back at end line, you measure learning, kids learning, and then you just adopt the most effective version. So whichever one had the biggest boost in learning, that's your new status quo. And then you rinse and repeat. So each time it's getting better and better and more cost effective as you go. So why did we do this? And I guess I've shared a bit about the motivation. So we started, Youth Impact was founded in 2014 with a 3-year RCT. And I guess we just got a bit frustrated that learning took 3 years to have a big crunchy answer. We wanted to learn a lot faster, and so borrowed this approach from the tech sector to learn a lot faster. So you can see the light blue dots starting in 2017 is where we introduced A/B testing in our HIV prevention program. And so through the course of time, we've now built this muscle. We have a big in-house research team. And we have a great system of inflowing light indicators. And so that now it's actually quite a light lift. So now we run A/B tests across all of our programs every school term. When the moment calls for it, you can see in 2020 in COVID, when we developed this program I'm going to share about, we needed to do some RCTs to see if it was even effective and if it did improve kids' learning. And so this muscle of inflowing data means it's easy to kind of answer whatever question using whatever tool is needed at that point in time. So now let me get to the crunchy example. Noam shared a little bit about this yesterday on the keynote, but I guess there's a lot of evidence on best buys in education. And so one of the best buys in education is targeted instruction, which is kind of based on 7+ randomized control trials on a program that first was developed in India by Pratham, called Teaching at the Right Level. And that's, got very strong evidence from across countries, delivery types, implementers, that it's really robust. And so now as we're trying to take teaching at the right level to scale, we want to be optimizing it so it's not dropping in effect. During COVID, we couldn't deliver this program in person, as schools were closed, and so we kind of adopted those principles and delivered it over the phone. And so these principles that teaching at the right level is based on is kind of like ignoring what grades kids are in, assessing what they know, and then teaching them at the level that they're at. So for example, we do a quick diagnostic in this program. Do they know addition, subtraction, multiplication, division? And then you teach them at the level that they're at. The program is a one-on-one weekly phone call tutoring for kids in primary school, and then has some weekly math SMS problems. And so in the first week, you're delivering tutoring at the level that they're at. So if they knew addition but not subtraction, you're teaching them subtraction. You do a quick, tiny assessment at the end of that call, and then you decide what you're teaching next week based on that. So if they got the subtraction correct, you move up to multiplication. If they got it incorrect, you repeat. So that's how the targeted instruction works for this program. Now we've conducted 7 RCTs in 7 different countries, and in all of them it's been really cost effective. And so now we're scaling with governments in 10 countries to kind of help them scale this program up, and have run over 30 randomized experiments on this. And this is kind of, crossing that efficacy to effectiveness kind of bridge. So this example now that we're trying to cross this bridge and make sure it doesn't drop in effectiveness as we're scaling, we've conducted 12 A/B tests, and that's what I'm sharing now. So the sample that I'm going to be sharing is around 15,000 kids. They're mostly in grades 3, 4, and 5. Conducted in Botswana. So pretty much all of the sample is very representative of the country. Most of the white areas where we haven't worked is just desert. We have good response rate at end line, and balance at baseline. As I shared, kind of the first randomized control trial of this program was conducted in 2020, and then since then we've conducted these 12 tests. So I'm showing results from 2021 to 2024. One thing that's emerged from these is kind of like 2 buckets of A/B testing questions. So the first one is a little more obvious. It's called effectiveness enhancing test. It's where you think you have this great program and everyone's like, ooh, if we did this as well, it would really juice it up and make it a bit more effective and improve learning a bit more. So these are ones where you add something to it and then you measure learning at the end, and if version B is a bit more effective and improving learning a bit more, you adopt that as your new status quo. And then the next set of tests is actually a bit less intuitive and like a bit rare. Like there's a strong evidence of like a bias to add things, but against subtracting things. So the next set of tests are ones where we try and reduce something, but hope there's a zero. So when we're comparing learning in A and B, we hope there's no difference between them, which is a bit counterintuitive. But group B here is a lot cheaper than group A. So for example, we look at the budget and we see what are the most expensive line items, what are the biggest frictions to scale, what takes a lot of time, which is a lot of labor time. Can we strip that back and like have learning be equal, which is the other part of the cost effectiveness equation. And then you adopt, assuming there's a zero difference in learning, you adopt the cheapest version as your new status quo. So this is kind of, we've discovered a lot of great stuff here, which I'll share about. This is kind of the new area of focus for a lot of our A/B tests. So let me share some specific examples. So from the effectiveness enhancing bucket, well, a lot of the sources of our A/B test ideas are like going to the teachers, looking at the literature, and then people sharing, oh yeah, when we're implementing, doing this tutoring call, the session goes really well when caregivers are actively engaged in the call. They're like not just wandering around, they're sitting next to their kid and like helping the tutoring call go well. So we thought we would lean into that. So group A is the status quo. It's like a free-for-all, no specific instruction for the caregivers. But in group B, we encourage the caregivers to actively like co-lead the tutoring session and to like lead part of the tutoring call. So what did we find? You can see in the red box at the bottom these really nice results. So we repeated this test just to be extra sure and give us a bit more statistical power. So here, the key is that the line down the middle shows no difference in learning. So if the dot and whiskers cross the thick line in the middle, that means there's no improvement in learning from this modification. So you can see a bunch of duds, mostly duds, but these ones at the bottom, these are huge effects. So this is showing that there's a 0.25 standard deviation improvement in learning, and now I need to give a rule of thumb. So in education, most interventions don't work, but those that do, the median effect size is like 0.1 standard deviation. So that's usually used as a rough rule of thumb for an effective education program, is 0.1. So here, this program is more than double the effectiveness of a typical education program, and this is so low marginal cost. It's like asking caregivers to spend 20 minutes sitting next to their kid a week, which is like costless to us and very low cost to the household, and massively boosts learning impact, which is just such a nice, clear example of the value of this. Another thing to keep in mind is this is already a super effective program. We've found through RCTs in 7 countries that this program already causes a 0.12 to a 0.35 standard deviation improvement in learning. That's in group A. So group A is getting this great thing. And then on top of that, there's another 0.25 standard deviations improvement in learning. So really nice, and then a bunch of duds. You can see some of these are like on the edge of statistical significance. And so for some of these where the cost is really low, like sending an SMS, then you adopt that anyway, even if it's not statistically significant. Now let me share a cost-reducing example. So another sources I shared for ideas for tests is like looking at the budget. So like what is really annoying, what do people hate doing, or what's really time-consuming, because time-consuming costs money. And a big part of this program, a big cost driver, is like connecting the household and the tutor and matching them up so that they're available at the same time. It's like lots of attempts to call little kid Claire, and then like re-attempting it. Oh, she's gone to play across the street, call back in an hour. Oh, now she's at her uncle's house. So it's a lot of time spent doing this connection. So we had one test where we tried allowing a different caller, a different tutor to call the kid each week. People were skeptical. They thought it's really important, the relationship that you build, that would really improve learning. So this one was an open question. And then the group B had like a different tutor each week. And what did we find? So in this one, it's really counterintuitive, as I mentioned, but here we're hoping to find all the dot and whiskers through the zero. We're hoping to find zero difference in learning between the status quo and the cheaper version. So delightfully, every single one of these cost-reducing tests, they all go through the zero. So that tells us that this cheaper version of the program is just as effective. So these ones, you can see why we're now really excited about cost-reducing tests, because they're all winners. Even if the efficiency improvement has been a bit smaller, which I'll share, they're just like a really high hit rate. And so what is the efficiency improvement? So it ranges between a 5% and 11% boost or reduction in cost for these cost reducing tests, and all of these led to an efficiency improvement. On the effectiveness enhancing test, it ranges between 0 with the ones where there was no improvement in learning, or like a 32% boost in learning. So I guess this just like reinforces to me the value, just like leaving money on the table, not to try and change things. You can't just like do RCTs, be confident, and then wish for the best. Like there's so much good stuff to still be squeezed, and like learning just doesn't stop. But maybe everybody could have told us this already. Maybe we didn't need to test it. It was a bit of a pain in the behind to do that. And so we do actually survey teachers and staff beliefs about the value of an experiment. Are they like, do you already think this is going to work, or are you open to it? So this shows results. The light blue shows teachers' beliefs before a cost-reducing test. So before that same and different tutor, all the teachers on average think it's going to be worse outcomes for kids if you have a different tutor each week. And then we measure their beliefs afterwards, and they update their beliefs. So they actually like, oh, okay, actually, we can see it didn't reduce learning for kids. And so this does really reinforce the value of experimentation. Intuition is not enough. So in conclusion, I've shown you some results from A/B testing that's like kind of distilled into these 3 principles of rigorous, rapid, and regular. I've shown you also that these can broadly be categorized, these innovations, into either effectiveness enhancing or cost reducing tests. And I've also shown like kind of the value of these. So some of these have led to an 11% boost in efficiency without reducing learning, or a 30% boost in impact at very low marginal cost. So it just really shows it's kind of leaving money on the table not to be trying out these innovations. Thank you.
Terrific way to start the presentations this afternoon. I'm just going to remind you, we're going to keep pushing through the other presentations. So I've certainly been jotting down a bunch of notes for questions that I would like to ask. If you don't jot down yours, you're just going to have to listen to mine. So make a note of your questions, and we'll pick them all up at the end. We're now going to go to Azeez Gupta, who is beaming in online. So I will pass across to you, Azeez, to tell us about rocket learning.
Thanks so much, and I hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
Okay. So just give me a second. I'm just going to change something on my Wi-Fi. Just one sec. I think it should be better now. Great to be, sorry for the tech snafu. Great to be with you all online, and sorry I couldn't join you in person. It was wonderful to listen to Claire talking through all the work that she was sharing, and we've had the opportunity to partner with the What Works Hub team on many of the A/B tests that we have done. So as we go on, let me share a little bit about sort of rocket learning to begin with, so that you get some context of the work we do as a practitioner organization, and then how A/B tests have played a big role in our journey. And please do let me know in case you're not able to hear me at any point, or if I cut off at any point. Yeah, let me also full screen. Sec. All right, I think this should be good now. So, if I was to quickly share about rocket learning. So sorry about this, some issues happening. Overall, rocket learning is India's largest early childhood development organization with a government systems and use technology to engage children going to the government system in India. These daycare teachers called Anganwadi educators who are teaching children in preschools in the classroom. and then parents of the 3 to 6 year old preschoolers who are engaging with them at home. So this is both an in-classroom instruction support program and after-school at-home learning program with the two different stakeholders. And we are currently partnering with governments across the country to reach about 5 million children across the nation. The reason why we focus on this is on the slide here, that early childhood is a really critical period when a lot of intellectual ability, social ability, self-regulation, cognitive function, all of that is getting developed. And as you can see on the chart, it's the first 6 years are really pivotal for that. And after that, sort of plasticity of the brain goes down. And there are studies now that are showing about how there is a lot of IQ development, brain development that happens at this age group. Now, I'm so sorry, I think there is.
We'll give Azeez a minute and see whether the internet gods will smile on us. So I've got the benefits of having his slides in front of me, and just to recap a little bit that was getting a bit distorted there. So Azeez was starting off by just making the observation that there are 40 million second graders who cannot recognise a single number or letter and so are not school ready. And this was, I guess, setting the context for their work. And then he showed that slide that we saw up on the screen around the importance of early childhood development. And then he was going to go on and talk about rocket learning, and I feel like I would be stealing his thunder if I were to speak to that myself. I'll just look across to Sam and see whether we're getting any joy yet. What?
Hi, I think I'm back now.
Hi Azeez, we can hear you clearly again now, and I've just caught people up on your introductory slides where it was just breaking up a little bit. So I think you're at the point of sharing with us about rocket learning and what you do.
Sure. Okay. Understood. Thank you for stepping in there, and so sorry about my internet, which has been a bit of a, suddenly sort of become a bit of a challenge. But let me then jump back into the discussion, and I think you can see my screen. So I told you about rocket learning. Now the problem today in India is that about 40 million children in grade 1 and 2 cannot recognize a single number or letter. And so that's a huge problem. As I mentioned, a lot of the brain development happens by the age of 6. So that's what we're trying to solve. We're engaging with caregivers, both parents and teachers, and they're actually quite aspirational for children. They're quite incentivized socially and for their kids to actually engage with children on learning. And what we do is basically we use WhatsApp to engage with kids. The idea is that today, in India, about 80% of parents who's, at the bottom of the pyramid, whose kids go to government schools.
All right. I think, Ben, we're going to put you on the spot and swing across to your presentation. And Sam, I don't know if you're able to send a message to Azeez and just let him know that we'll try to come back to him if the internet improves. We're certainly getting some psychedelic experiences going on there. I'd now like to welcome Ben to speak about optimising program implementation, a strategic approach to A/B testing.
Thank you. Can I have my water as well, actually? Thank you. A bit of an inauspicious start to a presentation, if there ever was one. I'm very happy to be Azeez's understudy, though, and step in. I'm sure he'll be back with us. So I'm Ben Tan. I work for Innovations for Poverty Action. We're a global development research and policy organisation, and we work across the Global South, but particularly in Sub-Saharan Africa and a little bit in Latin America and Southeast Asia. I'm excited today to share with you some work that we've been doing over the past couple of years on trying to put A/B testing into practice with a range of partner organisations in the ed tech, education technology sector. And I think Claire's already shared a lot of the reasons why A/B testing can be really powerful. What I want to focus on today is, well, how do we actually get there? What are the steps you need to go through to make that a reality, and some of the kind of hard-won lessons that we've had working with our partners on trying to make that part of their work. So I think the promise of A/B testing, actually Claire's already really gone through this, so I won't labour the point, is that, well, maybe I've got all the same R's as you had before, Claire. So in addition to what Claire said about it being rigorous and rapid, A/B testing is also incredibly scalable. So it's a way to continue learning even once programs are at scale. And in fact, A/B tests get more powerful the larger the scale is. And I think Claire made the point already that because you're using administrative data in most cases, it can be very cheap once you have the system set up. I won't go through the example because I think Claire's already shared, like a powerful example, and probably Azeez will share another powerful example of why A/B testing works and can have really substantial impacts, except to say that that has also been borne out in the work that we've done with our partners. Let me skip through. Oh, here we go. So I think the challenge is it doesn't always work. So Claire showed some duds. But we had just about more duds than hits, right? And actually, I think evidence from the private sector suggests that in the range of 10, as low as 10 and maybe as high as 40% of A/B tests work. So the majority of them don't work. And I think this sort of makes intuitive sense. It's like it's hard to find the things that work really well. Do we have any James Blunt fans in the audience? 20 years since the release of his classic album, Back to Bedlam. Can anyone name for me a James Blunt song? It's not. That's a great example. That's an undeniable hit. Could someone name another? There aren't any other hits. So the question is, how do we get more You're Beautiful and less Bonfire Heart? Never heard of that before. And then I think the other issue is that if you have a lot of tests, then maybe it doesn't matter if a bunch of them are duds, because you get, which I guess is sort of the James Blunt approach, you just keep writing music until you get more hits. But we don't have that, at least in global development. Generally, we don't, and particularly in ed tech, I think we don't. So Optimizely, which is probably the biggest A/B testing platform used in the private sector by tech companies, they did a review recently of all of the A/B tests that have been run on their platform, and they found that something like 34, the average company is running like about 34 tests per year. But by the way, they also found that most of the impact comes from the first 10. So, like maybe your ideas get worse over time. But that is quite a lot, right? And this adds up to like tens of thousands per year across all of the platforms within any given sector. And the top 3% of companies are running huge, like hundreds of experiments per year. I think by comparison, in the entire edtech sector, roughly, Claire's told you about 12, and then I think Azeez is going to tell you about a couple more. So I'm guessing it's like in around 14 we have across the whole sector. It's just not enough to get the kinds of, large-scale impact that this method could be delivering. So the question is, how do we fix that? From the projects that we've done now with about 10 organisations trying to set up stronger testing platforms, we think there's two things. One, choose the right tests, ones that have a high potential return. And then secondly, build a system so you can keep doing it. So not a one-off test, but build an iterative learning system. I'm going to talk briefly about what we've learned about how to do both of those things. So firstly, when it comes to picking the right test, there are 3 steps. First of all, pick your area of interest. Claire already actually talked about like efficacy tests and then cost-reducing tests. I'm going to add a third type, which is like reach-expanding tests. Okay, so things that can allow the software to reach a larger number of people. Secondly, get the metric right, and then thirdly, figure out the variations to use. So first of all, this is This is why I would bring in the reach point. So, impact divided by cost is cost effectiveness, but that's also multiplied by the reach of the intervention. And so, that's also another way that you can increase overall cost effectiveness. Here are some examples of the sorts of metrics that you could use once you've decided whether you're focusing on reach, impact, or effectiveness. And often we think it makes sense to start with maybe not like the most meaningful KPI, which might be like student learning outcomes. That might not be easy to get, or it may not be very regularly collected. So find the indicator that works to start to build that system. And we've put some examples here of the sorts of things that we've worked with partners on. Reach indicators, number of users active or being onboarded, product KPIs around frequency of usage, or perhaps changes in some of teachers' practices, how they're using the software. And then on the cost side, it's just about unit cost. And then thirdly, try and find the variations that are most likely to win. And here I think it's good to draw on the mistakes that other people have made, like learn from the hits and the duds that have gone before. And that's like looking at the literature. Doing user research can also be a really helpful way of coming up with ideas for variations, and also input from both experts as well as field staff who are experts in their own right. So you come up with your options. Here's some options that we've worked on with partners. And then you've got to think about sequencing and prioritization. So, okay, here's the ideas we have. Well, what's our prior? Which of these do we think is most likely to have good bang for buck? That's what we call relevance, and which of them are most feasible to implement, right? And we start with things that are easy to implement, then we're more likely to be able to build momentum over time for testing. So this is sort of, I've tried to lay out a way of like building a roadmap for testing that allows for some strategy and for a plan for how you might invest in A/B testing over time. So with this is an example. We worked with an organisation called Shire that has like a teacher's aid, AI bot, to help teachers with their daily lesson planning. And so they have an interesting challenge actually, which is that they don't in their platform have data on students, right? Because teachers are the users. So we had to think, well, what's an outcome that teachers' data would show up that is meaningful that they can use as an optimization metric? And so one thing they came up with was, focused on impact, is this learning variability feature. So it's like teachers coming up with lesson plans that account for variability in learning levels. That's something that's quite well established through programs like targeted instruction to have an impact. So how can we get more teachers using that particular feature? That's the outcome that we focused on with them, and then came up with ideas around, let's try out a bunch of interventions that could push teachers in that direction and put them into a roadmap with them. And that's a picture of the little banner that I don't speak Spanish, but I understand that banner says that is encouraging teachers to use this, that feature. I'll tell you what happened later. So then the second piece I said is about what is the infrastructure you need, the processes you need to be able to run these tests in an ongoing way. So again, three things conveniently. First of all, sample size, which is often actually like a binding constraint. Secondly, having the right data systems. And third, the analysis. So sample size, the reality is that, I'm just repeating the same thing. The reality is that you do need a minimum sample for an A/B test to have a reasonable chance of giving you a meaningful result. You can do things like play with the significance level or the confidence level and try and, be a bit more kind of like pragmatic in how you're interpreting data. But ultimately, until you get to, like 1,000, a sample of 1,000 or so data points, it's hard to have much confidence in the results because the error bars are just so wide. And so this actually is a challenge for a lot of edtech organisations that are working at quite small scale, and is a reason why actually you need to have a certain size before this can be a really valuable tool. Or have really high-powered interventions that you think are going to make a big difference. Secondly, when it comes to the data systems, there's sort of two things. Sometimes they can be integrated or the same tool. One is the experimentation platform. So how you make sure that two users get two different versions of like half the teachers get the banner and half don't get the banner, or get a different banner or something. That's the experimental setup. And then there's the data tools. So you also need to have the data systems in place that can measure the outcomes. And these need to be able to talk to each other so that you can run the data run the analysis in a relatively automated way, and not do, as one of our initial partners did, manually downloading the data and then trying to merge it up and then running the analysis separately. It's just so painful that kind of process is never going to become like a culture of experimentation. We need to make it much easier for people to do it. And there are tools that specifically are designed to do that. So I've listed two here: Evidential and Upgrade, particularly well used in education. There's another open source tool called Growthbook, which is on the experimentation side, and then on the data analytics side, with this client I mentioned before, we use their own data system, which was Google's Looker Studio, to do the analysis. And then lastly, you do the analysis, and that's the fun part. Actually, often the easy part compared to all the stuff I just mentioned before, of like choosing the indicator, choosing the intervention, and then setting up the data system. So here's where I show you the result here. And there's kind of two things, which actually I think are kind of intuitive. It's like, one, how credible is the result? So how compelling is the result in terms of the confidence interval, the width of the confidence interval, how far away it is from a null result, and the comparability of the groups. And then secondly, how effective is it? So is the difference actually something meaningful? Is the difference large enough that it matters? And in this case, they saw quite a meaningful impact, a 5 percentage point increase in the number of teachers using this learning variability tool, which is substantial and would make a difference in the classroom practice and then the learning experience of students in those classrooms. And if you're in the world where you have a large effect that's not statistically significant, then you have something that's like potentially very effective but not as credible. Here you're in the world where you have to try and be pragmatic, and maybe you run the test again, or maybe you just use your best judgment based on what you've got. Where are we? No, I'm not pointing this to the right person. Oh, there we go. There you go. I guess those are the three results: negative, inconclusive, or null, or a positive effect. So which world are you in, and make the decision. So we have put this information into a guidebook. We've just published this. We've had some support from the What Works Hub for Global Education as well on developing this A/B testing guide. So that's a link on the left. And then the initiative on the right is the Partnerships for Technology in Education initiative, which allowed us to do these engagements, these projects with partners, building these systems, learning these lessons, and then bring the results back to you and to the wider sector. So thank you so much for your attention. Looking forward to the questions.
Sam, how are we looking with Azeez now?
If you tell him to hold these slides, if he's just going to present.
Hi Azeez. Thanks for your patience. It's always hard work dialing in remotely. Usually I just find it hard because I can't see everybody and get their reactions, but we've had a few extra challenges. What our tech person is suggesting is that he'll share the slides, so if you just speak to them and let him know when to click through, that might save your bandwidth.
Got it. Understood. We can do that. And thank you to all of you for bearing with my internet issues here. Somehow when Claire was speaking, I could see and hear her perfectly, and then it winked out. Thanks to Ben for stepping in. I hope you all can hear me, and excited to go now after two great speakers. I think, when we were talking last, I was talking about Rocket Learning. I will not spend too much time now on that. I think we let the tech team pull up the slides so I can, perfect. Great. I think we can go on to the sort of next to the parent slide. So I can. So overall, let me share what we do. In fact, maybe we can skip on a couple more slides. Yeah, we can stay here. So overall, I think it's important for everybody to get us understanding of sort of what we do, so that then I can get on to how A/B tests have helped us. We use WhatsApp at large scale to send simple content to parents and teachers. Content that teachers can use for their classroom activities and that parents can use to do homework, right? So this is simple, and in India there is a lot of penetration of smartphones and WhatsApp, so it sort of works well for us. Every day we send a couple of videos to teachers, either on groups or on one-on-one, and we ask them to do some activities in the classroom basis those videos, and send back a photo or a video of what they've done that day. We then store all of that data and use that to send feedback to them, rewards, incentives, reminders, nudges. A lot of behavioral science sort of goes into it, and basis that we try to keep their engagement up. And then sort of as far as that goes, we see pretty good engagement compared to other edtech standards out there, in terms of about 30% parents engage regularly over a good period of time, and more than 80% teachers engage regularly over a period of time in terms of doing these activities and sending photos and videos back. So for us, if you go to the next slide, or maybe a couple more, so we can stop here on this slide. Yes. Fundamentally, the idea for us, the metric for us that we try to move is the number of responses that either parents are sending back to us or teachers are sending back to us, because that's a proof point of whether they're actually doing this in the classrooms. Plus, it also creates this user community and gets people to engage more, right? So that's what we've done. But there are different types of responses, right? So there is like a activation response, which is that the first time ever that a user, a parent or a teacher, send back a photo or a video to us, right? And then engagement becomes sort of, as we go on, they've sent one photo or video, but we want them to keep sending photos and videos and responses back every week, every day, and then drive up, right? Eventually, we want them to become power users, which means that they've sent back photos or videos more than 12 to 15 times in a month to us. And then we want them to retain over a period of time, right? So in that way, the advantage for us has been that we get a huge amount of data. We work with 5 million children, and we get sort of millions of data points every day because we are getting these responses back from many of them. And so we have all that metadata that shows us, what's happening to each user at an individual level, but also to sort of different cohorts and groups, and allows us to then think about sending them reminders and messages, right? So the core product is 2 simple videos a day. These are demos of activities that you should do with the kid. Right. But then layered onto that is a series of reminders and nudges and badges, very similar to Duolingo, right? If you've seen that, but for a very different audience. So for us, the idea has been that can we help improve activation? Can we help improve engagement and retention? Right, and that will then lead to mindset change and learning outcomes. And so this series of A/B tests that I'm going to talk about is focused more on these output metrics. Our users sort of are more our new users sending back a single photo or a video. Our existing users sending back more photos and videos over a longer period of time, right? So of the child learning. So that's the metric that I'm going to talk about. Now we're also doing a series of tests on learning outcomes as well, and trying to sort of measure the impact on that final outcome. But we feel that output leads to that outcome. So I think our first series of tests was on that we've done over the last 2 years. I'm happy to sort of go on to the next slide, please. Yeah, I think, again, as Claire said, as Ben said, I think, products, I think these days, models don't need to be final, right? So you don't need to sort of say, oh, we have a final product and now, so we're developing product, we'll take a few years to do that, and then we will now scale, and we'll take a few years to scale this stable, steady state product, right? How we've approached it is that we have sort of developed a good enough product, scale that, at the same time keep doing this A/B testing, keep iterating. As we learn this works, we then push it out across large scale, right? And with technology, it's easier to sort of scale up the innovations that work, but even otherwise, it's quite possible with sort of good communication methods today to do that. So product is never final. We keep experimenting and sort of keep trying to learn. Now let me we can move on to the next slides, and I can actually talk about sort of how we do. And I think one big learning that we've had, sort of a headline learning, is that small gains sort of don't add, they compound. So I think each A/B test allows us to get some insights, then that becomes a core principle of like the model and then of further A/B tests. And so in this series of tests that I'll take you through, we were seeing sort of in the first set of things, we were seeing like 1 percentage point increase, 0.5, 2 percentage points, and you often sort of feel that sort of they are low, even though at scale obviously those make a lot of impact. But then suddenly like 3 or 4 pieces come together, and you see that suddenly we've hit like a 10 to 20% point increase in engagement, right? And so I think that's been interesting that for a year, like small things happened, and then suddenly it really became a big thing, right? So I'd encourage everybody to be patient, as Ben also encouraged. While you do that, some things won't work or some things will work a little bit, and then if you keep building on those principles, then you'll probably on doubling down on the things that work and combining different things that work together, you'll get these outsized sort of effects. But to begin with, at the very first level, when we started, we said that we will send generic reminders to all parents, saying that let's do these. Do these activities at home. So an example of the activities is, for example, you take a set of pulses and you put them in a bowl, and then the teacher and then the parent is supposed to do that. That's a video of a real parent doing that with their kid is sent to a vast number of parents, and parents are asked to do this at home with their kid and take a photo of what they've done or a video and then send it back to that group of parents, right? So that's so we want to increase those number of photos or videos. So then we used to basically send a generic message, right? Like on any given day, saying that, did you do today's activity? Please do it and send back a photo or a video, right? So that was the call to action. That was a totally generic message, sent independent of any thing that the parent was doing or not doing, right? It was the same message sent to every parent. So it was a generic message, one-on-one. And we saw that has a little bit of impact, right? Reminders do help and do create that, but they don't help very much, honestly, right? And so then we said, okay, can we start sending personalized reminders, right? And that personalized reminder, for example, was that we saw that you didn't do tomorrow. Yes, you did day before activity, but you didn't do yesterday's activity. Can you do that today, right? And we saw that personalized reminder worked much better. Again, behavioral science sort of shows that, right? Because they feel that this is really somebody who's sort of engaging with us and knows what we're doing. So the accountability built up. So personalized messaging worked better. And then we started trying to do calls, actually. So we tested generic messaging versus personalized versus calling. So there was the ABC test, and calling actually worked even better because you're sure that person is picking up the phone and hearing you out, but it was much more expensive. So but calling was the only thing that worked for users who were never activated, right, in the first place. So then we learned that just sending a WhatsApp message isn't enough to get somebody new to start. We need to call them to do that. So that became a core part of the program, and we set up a huge telecalling team to do that now, all right, and that really helped us. But it's expensive to build engagement via calling for people who are already somewhat engaged, right? And so we said, okay, then maybe we don't do much calling for the somewhat engaged user. We try to push them at the needle on personalized messaging further, right? And we realized one thing. So this was the first series of one-on-one messaging, and that gave us some insight that, look, let's do calls for some users and let's do personalized messaging for others, right? But the personalized messaging we saw wasn't very real time, right? Like we were sending it, say, a day later after they had sent the last message or after we had sent our call to action. And so many users were already disengaged or they were not looking at the device at that point, so they missed it, right? And so then if you go to the next slide and we see the next series, right, series 2, then we decided to sort of try it in a fairly different way, where we said that, look, we'll send it like within an hour of somebody sending us a message, right? We will send them an appreciation message saying that, great job, you did some learning with your kid today, right? And we said, okay, let's actually start trying to send it on groups. Now, the limitation on groups is that, of course, you are sending messages to many people, so you can't sort of bombard it too much. So we're sending to like 5 parents, right? Saying that, all of whom had messaged in the last hour, saying that, oh, great job that you sent this, right? And we actually saw that this real-time engagement saw a huge jump, right? 10% increase in daily active users because the user was very likely to see that message because it was coming very soon after they sent it. Plus, they thought that there is some sort of real person who's actually sort of seeing this content and sending back that response to us right away. And so that really helped as well, right? So then that we learned that it has to be very real time, right? So series 2 worked much better than series 1. Then we said, okay, let's build on this principle. And so on the next slide, as we go to the next slide, then we will see series 3, which is that we said, okay, we can't personalize hugely because it's a group, right? So let us try real time. Let us try personalized, but let's try it on one-on-one, right? And so then we started doing that on one-on-one, right? And then we saw that was working again even better. But then we went on to series 4, which actually was the one in the next slide, which really sort of again built on all of these, where we said that, okay, we're sending sort of these personalized messages, but can we try to use some social psychology in this aspect, right? So we said, okay, there are we read through the psychological research and the behavior change research, and we said, okay, let's send people a self-comparison message where we said that, last week you had done homework with your kid 3 times and sent it back to us. Now you can do it 5 times, right? So can you put a goal, right? And they said our goal is 5. And then we would send them back a message saying that, oh, your goal was 5, but you only did it 3 times or 4 times. So that worked really well. Then peer comparisons worked really well, where we were sending messages saying that, look, you are sort of number 3 in your classroom. If you send 2 more messages, you'll be number 1, right? So, but again, peer nudges worked on some sorts of users and self-comparison worked on others. So A/B testing actually helped us figure out the sort of personas and the demographic and the behavior cohorts, right? On which we should be sending peer comparison and on which we should be sending self-comparison, because, again, those were sort of the less active ones wanted self-comparison because they didn't want to be discouraged. You don't want to be told that you're last in the class. But if you're in the top 3, then you're happy to be told you're sort of top 3. But you can actually go from 3 to 1. Right. So then we said, okay, we will do, we combined all these aspects, right? It's going to be real time. It's going to be personalized. It's going to be one-on-one, and we'll use the psychological nudges, right? So, and that ended up sort of increasing even more substantially. I think if we go on the next slide, some of those numbers are there about how we sort of did some of that. But actually, let me close on the parent piece, right? So because of series 1, 2, 3, and 4, we saw the number of power users on our model went from 30% of users to 50%, right? Which is a huge jump. And that took us like 1.5 to 2 years to do, right? Because some of the early ones were the duds or they're leading to small gains. And then eventually we were able to combine and come up with a very sophisticated sort of system where we were sending like very different sorts of nudges real time based on different personas and user cohorts and seeing this huge jump. Right. And then we said, oh, let's now try this with teachers as well. Right. So we built this all for parents, but we said like the teacher category may also work and maybe many similar things will work there. So we tried this whole set of things to teachers as well on WhatsApp. And there we actually added on one other principle, which was sort of a lottery format where we were saying, oh, today is your turn, right? So to 2 people, we would specifically tag 2 teachers. So these were teachers on teacher groups. And on that teacher group, we would actually tag 2 teachers every day, saying today you have to send a especially good activity, right? And the next day 2 other teachers would add it. And we'd sort of say, this is your lucky day where you can show off how well you're doing. And again, they would get encouragement real time and this lottery worked even more, right? And you can see some of the stats on screen. I won't sort of go through those, but pretty substantial sort of engagement of very low cost things, right? Because we're not actually having to give them a lot of material. It's just messaging or it calls. If I go to the next slide. In the process, we also sort of refined our A/B testing, and we also refined our overall sort of strategy of engaging with users, right? So from manual messaging, we've actually moved to a very sophisticated AI, sort of nudging engine, automated engine that incorporated the results of all these A/B tests. Right, we did sort of instead of some particular rules, we did a lot of archetype-based nudging. Now we're trying to use AI to actually do this A/B testing at scale itself, if possible. Right. Earlier we used to A/B test only for engagement, right? For engagement of already activated users. Now we're sort of A/B testing every part of the journey, including how are we actually adding users to the groups to begin with. So while a lot of the early tests were only on digital interventions, now we're actually doing it for a lot of offline interventions as well. And we were pretty slow earlier. We would do sort of one A/B test, then we would analyze it, then we would do more. Now we actually break into a lot of different cohorts, make sure that A/B tests are not interfering or overlapping, but run sort of 15 A/B tests simultaneously. In a year, we're running about 30 to 40 A/B tests, and we see that as a result of that, some of these gains really are compounding very much, and we're also learning what doesn't work and removing that, and that makes it cheaper for us to run as well. We can go on to the next slides. I think I'm mostly done with sort of series 1 to 5. So I think in that way, hopefully this has given the group a little bit of an idea of how, we have been sort of changing different aspects of our work. If you go to the next slide, I can quickly sort of talk about next steps and maybe finish off in a minute or so. I think maybe some issues with the presentation, but yeah, I think we can go on to the next slide, which is the final slide of the presentation. Slide 23, please. Yes, so where do we want to go, right? So I think we continue to be very committed to A/B testing, and sort of we're doing this at large scale. We've raised funding for this, and we're sort of big evangelists along with the WhatWork, the WhatWorks hub, and as well as other people working in this field. And I think one of the examples I use is that we've also done a randomized control trial with some wonderful researchers that has shown us that the overall model works very well, right? But that is taking that took 2 years to do, and then like 2 years more to publish. And of course, that gave us a lot of insight that we used. But a lot of these A/B tests actually are helping us at sort of really, really micro levels, figuring out what to do well. And we also now developed an internal platform that then we worked with the agency fund to sort of open source called Evidential, which Ben also mentioned. And I'd encourage people to reach out to the Evidential team if you would like. They're available online, or you can reach out to me, which will allow others to also use that platform, right? And there's a good UI and UX and all of that sort of stuff. There is effort, I won't say there's no effort involved in doing it. I think there is effort in thinking up your data pipelines, with these sorts of platforms, figuring out sort of the right models and how to sample best, et cetera. So there is some upfront effort that is required. But I think once that engine gets going, it really sort of makes it fast and makes it really powerful, right? And you can use various different platforms can be used, but just that be prepared for that initial effort in setting it up, and then there's those first tests which may not go that well. But if you keep at it and you keep sort of cutting out the principles that are working for your users, then I think we'll see a lot of gains. So I think that's it. I'll stop there, and three of us are happy to take questions. Thanks again for bearing with this hybrid online setup.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Azeez, both for your tenacity with the IT, but also for the tremendous amount of work that's clearly gone in behind the scenes to run through that that huge series of tests. And I think I had the same reflection with Claire's presentation. We get to see cheaper by the dozen. Here's a dozen tests we ran, and we can just rattle through them in a 20-minute presentation. But there were, as you could see in that initial chart, that was an accumulation of work over a number of years that has all been sort of condensed down for us. So I think it's worth just appreciating the amount of effort that Youth Impact and Rocket Learning have both put in to build the evidence and to improve the effectiveness and cost effectiveness of what they do. I would like to open things up for questions, and if you could just let us know who you are and if the question's directed to the panel generally or to an individual member. And I've got a hand over here, and then I'll come to two over here.
Hello, Christopher Hoy from the University of Melbourne. So fantastic presentations, and I just wanted to hear across all the panellists reflections on how A/B testing could be used in things beyond EdTech, because I think they're like fantastic examples of within EdTech, but it would just be good to know more. Are there other applications you can see and other suggestions for how this could be easily adopted?
Who would like to have a go at that first?
Should we answer as we go?
No, I think let's
I can take a step. Okay. Yeah. Yes, and.
Diana Contreras from University of Melbourne as well. I was going to ask that question, and to add to that question is like, what are the type of outcomes? So all the examples were given on education. So is there other areas, and it depends on. Could you give us some examples of how to think about what are the outcomes that we could measure in this rapid testing? Because I'm pretty sure this doesn't apply for everything, but is there a way like a general recipe that we can think about it, or is it just very specific to what's happening? And my second question was, when you reducing things from your program or whatever you are delivering, is there a way to think about that? Because this is maybe for Claire specifically. For example, you were mentioning with the parent to be involved in the teaching, but maybe at some point you want to test what happens if you remove the parent from delivering this messaging. Would that be like, if let's say, because cognitive development is a function, like it's something that develops, increases. You don't lose what you have learned and the development that has happened, right? So how do you think about those things that you already have learned and you are not going to lose just because one component of the program is not given to you? For example, here is how to use this text that they receive, and they independently learn how to do it because they were with the parents, and now they are able to do it independently. So if you remove that part, maybe your comparison is not a direct comparison. Thank you.
Awesome. I can take a stab then. Great. Thank you so much for those questions. So I think, I guess this program could be interpreted, the one I shared on ed tech, but you're right. I guess we do A/B testing across our program. So this is the only thing that involves any tech. The other ones are like human. So, and we do A/B testing there. So I guess we started doing A/B testing in our HIV prevention program, which is like with adolescent girls in high school. And there we've run a bunch. So one of our most recent tests is it's like a friction to scale. Like we have to hire the right gender facilitators if we match adolescent boys with male facilitators and girls with female facilitators. And so we did a test where we had mixed gender versus same gender kind of classes, and we found that they're equally effective. So that was a nice 0. So there, I guess that's one example for you, Diana. We also, I didn't do this plug, but we also do work with other organizations to help them do A/B testing. And they're working across like trying to repay university loans in South Africa, or kids going to health clinics in schools in Zambia. So there's like a bunch of other sectors. It's definitely not just ed tech at all. It's like there's human people stuff. It's a harder lift, I think. So that might be why we have a higher hit rate than the tech sector, for example, because we have to think pretty hard about the logistics and be pretty hopeful that this is going to work to roll something out and train people to deliver something in A versus in B. But yeah, we think it's possible, but I guess you're both kind of hitting on what we've discovered is one of the biggest challenges, and Ben kind of alluded to this too, is like picking the right outcome is hard. It's a lot of work. It took us 2 years to come up with the right one in the HIV prevention program, because the end outcome there is trying to reduce HIV rates. We're certainly not going to be, that one's very low power, it's very low base rate. That takes years to materialize. Pregnancy is higher in the theory of change, but that takes at least 9 months to materialize. That's too slow. So we spent a lot of time trying to find these proxy outcomes that are very correlated with your end outcome, but that your decision makers, your program manager is willing to make a decision on when they see group A is better than B, for example. So when we're helping other organizations to do A/B testing themselves, I would say this data flow phase that we're talking about and selecting your golden indicator that you're willing to optimize on, that is the vast bulk of the work. As Ben said, it's easy to do analysis. A/B tests, once you have the data flowing in at high enough frequency, at good enough quality with nice variation, then running an A/B test is easy. So yeah, that's the hard, crunchy stuff I don't want to minimize. It takes an organization really needs to be thinking about what they're trying to optimize. Okay, I've taken a lot of time.
Can I add to that briefly? I think the nice thing about education, and the reason we started there, is that the assessment can happen sort of in the app. If it's an ed tech platform, then the user's ability or the student's ability to answer knowledge questions, that is the outcome you care about. This is not the case in a lot of other apps that might be encouraging like health-seeking behaviours, or trying to get farmers to adopt new agricultural practices, or like fintech apps, the outcome you care about is not actually visible in the software. So I think that is a unique advantage of EdTech. It's not to say that you can't still find meaningful proxy indicators, but I think it is something that's quite particular to at least software that's trying to improve user knowledge. And so we've done other work, for instance, around sexual and reproductive health with adolescent girls in Latin America, where the outcome there actually was like girls' knowledge around risky sexual practices or health-seeking behaviours in relation to sexual and reproductive rights. So that is an example where I think it does lend itself a bit more easily to directly doing A/B testing in an app, and so you can save yourself the hassle of having to go out into the real world and collect all of the data.
Terrific. I think there was a question here. You've been covered? Okay, well, I've got one at the back over there, and then I'll come across to my left.
Hey, Kyoto Development Intelligence Lab. Really exciting stuff. It strikes me that because everything's so, I forgot the 3 R's, but it's so rapid and you're doing so many of these tests and it's so scalable that you're collecting so much information about what's working, factors or interventions that are getting you closer to your outcome, but also perhaps so many more about factors which aren't having a desired impact. Are you, I guess part A of the question, are you collecting all of that data as well? And then as A/B testing presumably takes off more and more, which I imagine is the hope, how I guess are you open sourcing all of this information? Because it just seems like it would be really useful for as many people as possible in the development space to be making the most of this, since there just is so much data that's just growing and growing and growing all the time.
Terrific questions. And I might ask Azeez if, from your perspective with Rocket Learning, to what extent are you able to take the findings from what you're doing and make them publicly available for others to use, and even potentially the underlying data? How possible is that for you?
I think very much possible, and we're sort of trying hard for that. I think this organization need to take out time and put in the effort, and I think that's where I think orgs like IPA and the WhatWorks Hub are great. So we're just now working on a paper with the WhatWorks Hub to publish the details of some of the stuff that I've mentioned in this presentation, so that it goes out more widely, right? And we're happy to share the detailed sort of data sets as well, honestly, because we feel that is important. So I think there is one element of stuff which is about the A/B testing process, the data, the tests themselves, and how to do those, which is important. And the other part is, of course, even the broader learnings, right? For example, that some of it seems a little obvious, but I think it's good to know, right? Because too many people even now do a lot of generic messaging and reminders, and knowing that personalized works better is helpful, right? Knowing to do it in real time is important. Now, not all of this may be sort of fully transferable everywhere, right? But at least knowing that these are the parameters that you should probably test for in your context is important. And so we are now trying to publish a lot more in development journals, speak at conferences like this, put it up on our website and others. Right, to spread the word. And I think, of course, orgs like the Hub and IPA are sort of across sector organizations and can work with a bunch of us practitioners to do this. But I think all of us also need to sort of invest in effort as practitioners to do more. So I mean, that's my 2 cents. But I would love to get any ideas from folks here on how how it would be better for us to sort of get some of the this word out, or what are sources where they could probably tap into to hear some of the stuff from us.
I think Azeez is, I think that's super admirable, and I think if we learn something meaningful and there's a way we can easily share that information with others that could be useful to, then I think that's great. And so for all of the A/B testing work that I mentioned and what we've funded as well through the initiative I mentioned, that's all open access, required to be open access. But I think what we've found is that sometimes the effort of getting things into kind of publication ready it is substantial, and it also butts up against organisational risk appetites. And I think we don't really want a world where only the kind of hits get published, because it makes it very hard to interpret everything else that's happening. And so I would say, I said in my presentation, start with the literature, start with what's out there that we've seen to work. But I think ultimately there's no substitute for kind of, seeing if it works in your own context. And so that's, I think, is really the end goal.
And I'll just add, agree with what both Ben and Azeez have shared. So I think public goods are extremely important, and to kind of build the momentum and help other organizations understand how to pick this up. I guess IPA is helping orgs to do this. Youth Impact also helps organizations to do this. The What Works Hub is helping organizations to do this, because I think there are a bunch of new toolkits and open source things that are coming out. So evidential, I think IPA is having a toolkit come out. We're having a toolkit come out soon. So, but it's more is needed than just having the documents. So I think having these resources is very helpful. And definitely agree we need to share what doesn't work too, because there's just as much to learn from that. And so I guess in Youth Impact, we're about to have a dashboard that we'll make public that shows all the duds and all the successes. We probably won't provide huge amounts of detail, but are happy to chat to people about it. And then the very time-consuming stuff is the academic publication. So we think it's important to work on all sides, because you can build momentum and credibility by doing tons of work to publish in academic settings, but it's also super important to have fast, quick, accessible things for different audiences. We're also going to release Noam and a team at Youth Impact have kind of distilled some of the key principles that get across a lot of the things that are nice in academic papers that get the credibility and rigor. It's a 2-page document, but it's just way more accessible. It's more decision relevant, that we hope to write after every A/B test and make that public. And I think the What Works Hub is hoping to be a bit of an aggregator for that, to get these nice insights that are really important to share. Thanks.
Terrific question, great reflections on that. Thank you. And over to Terence.
Yeah, hi. I'm Terence. I work here at ANU. This is a question for Claire. I'm kind of curious, when you're doing a cost-reducing intervention, how do you know for sure that it's not having a negative effect? Because it can't simply be that the confidence intervals don't cross zero, because that's just telling you that you don't have sufficient evidence to conclude there's an effect. So what, do you have a rule of thumb or something, like small coefficient plus large power, or what do you do?
Awesome, thanks for that, Terence. Yeah, so I guess you see that pretty much for all of our cost-reducing tests, because measuring a precise null is harder, and so we do actually repeat all of those tests. So then you can both, that's a replication, so you're redoing it to be more sure, but then you can pull results and have a more precise null. So you can see all of those were quite wide, but when you pull them, it gets a more precise zero. I guess I learned this, that in business school, people learn that a rule of thumb for a decision maker is 60% certainty. So academics are very risk averse and want 95% certainty, but program managers are often happy to move forward quicker. And then another thing I'll say related to that is we've also think with some tests it's a one-way door or a two-way door problem. And for ones where it's a two-way door, you could head down a direction and then you can change your mind more easily. Then you can kind of make it a bit more looser decision-making framework. Otherwise, if it's a one-way door and you're changing your infrastructure of how you deliver your program, you want more certainty.
Thanks. Elizabeth St. George. I'm an independent consultant on monitoring, evaluation and research for some DFAT programs, UN Women. And so I've been really interested in A/B testing for quite a number of years now, and I've raised it in different situations. Hey, we should try a test on this. One of the problems I come across is around capability, in that existing programs aren't set up with the statistical sort of knowledge that you seem to be needing. So a question around what sort of minimum capability do you need? And then if that capability changes over time in a project, project, how do you replace it? And with all those tests that you've done, how do you bring someone on board to say, oh, we've already done that, we've already found that? And my second question is around ethics, which is you're reaching out to children, vulnerable children, caregivers, and maybe this is specifically for the EdTech situation. What are the boundaries, protections you've got in place to make sure that that replacement tutor you've got in there isn't doing inappropriate things, and that you can tell your audience that it's all safe?
I'm going to look across to several members of the panel on that. So maybe for the capability questions, I might go to Claire or Ben. On the ethics question, I'd be interested in both Azeez and Claire's reflections. Azeez, how do you approach it at Rocket Learning?
Yeah. Actually, before I get into that, I think let me quickly on the capability. I think one, Ben will talk in more detail, but I think one capability you'll have to build in is to have your team be okay with understanding that some of the things they may be doing are actually not working. And that's sometimes one of the biggest challenges. We hold these cherished beliefs that this aspect of the model is critical or that aspect. And there is somebody in the team who, every aspect will be critical for somebody or the other, right? And then when you find through tests that those don't work, then people don't believe it. Then you have to do those again, and it's change management that way. Yeah? So I'll just mention that part as a psychological capability that I think is underestimated, and we've had to sort of figure that out. From an ethics perspective, I think in my mind, A/B testing is can be quite different from sort of the ethics or the controls, right? I think controls need to be there in any case, right? Like, are you sending the right sorts of messages that are not increasing stress, right? For the tutors, I can talk more. How do you sort of have monitoring, etc., to make sure that child safety is ensured, parental safety is ensured, all of that, right? So I think all of that has to be table stakes in terms of like that has to be there in like A and B and C, like all whatever arms of the test, right? Now in the test itself, as long as you're ensuring those table stakes are there, then there may not be a greater ethics risk of A versus B versus C. I think in some sense, the whole argument against RCTs is that, can you justify that for a year or two, you're not giving something that may work, right, to one audience just to see whether that thing actually works or not, right? And you should be giving everything that you think works to everybody. Actually, the A/B testing thing is good because you can actually do very rapid tests, right? So you can do it for like over 2 weeks and get to a result, or over like 1 or 2 months. And so actually, I believe that helps because you can very quickly learn that this is working, and if it is working, you can scale it to the others as well, right? And you're not having to run this for years and years. And so I think from ethics perspective, it's actually sort of quite good and much better than sort of the long-term trials that we have been used to in the development sector in the past. I'll stop there.
Yeah, great reflections. Do you want to add?
Thanks for the question, and props to you for spreading the good word and trying to look for opportunities to introduce testing and variation. That's really encouraging to hear. I think maybe as much as I like Azeez's idea about getting people to, change the psychology and I suppose have like less confidence in the cherished beliefs. I think I'm probably like a bit more pragmatic and would try to get people to start small and just like find the opportunities where we have pockets of data that are good enough, right? It's like the example I gave before about teacher using a particular app feature. This was something that just happened to be available. It was easy for them to start with. It's not like the most meaningful metric, but it's something. And so sort of starting there and then coming up with, the first test or the first few tests, I think can be really powerful in kind of demonstrating, the value of the model. And I think there's nothing more humbling than, and I've had this happen to me enough times now, you're sure that something's going to work. And then, you see the results and maybe it's not exactly what you expected. And I think that's like probably how then you start to build that muscle that Azeez is talking about of, well, let's be more open-minded and like treat every problem as a continuous learning opportunity. So yeah, that's what I would say.
So I'm just keeping an eye on the time. I think we've got time for a couple more questions. I'm just looking around to see. So I've got a question over here. Just check if there are any other hands. I'll just, okay, so I've got one here. Terrific. All right. Yes, go ahead.
I'm Izzy. I'm a PhD candidate here at the ANU. I don't know really anything about this, so this is a question out of pure curiosity. I suppose it's interesting that these testing models are very much being modelled after the tech sector, which if these are like hyper-capitalist sectors that basically we're now watching them sort of crunch through people, right, and sort of cutting costs where they can, which can cause a lot of problems. And so I'm wondering how you're implementing these within a sector which is people-focused and is trying to improve the lives of people and sort of avoiding that sort of hyper-capitalist cutting of people within these organisations and cutting corners, etc.
Sure, I can I can take a stab. So yeah, I guess learning isn't necessarily a capitalist construct, so I think that's what we feel like we're doing. It's learning. And even our very capitalist board member who is like a VP at Airbnb is like, if you look at the organizations that have lasted 100 years, it's the organizations that are learning. And so it's very nice to apply those principles that make capitalist organizations get better, meaning that we can reach more kids with learning. So I find that quite an easy translation to make. And so if we're saving money by reducing the time that a tutor is spent like scheduling calls, that literally one for one moves to time that tutors are spending teaching kids. And so yeah, I haven't found that a tough one to grapple with. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I think we'll take a final question over here.
Hello, my name is Justin. I'm from the Philippines. Maybe outside of EdTech, if some of the panelists can talk about their experience building the data systems, especially with governments. I'm sure governments have a lot of administrative data, but it probably isn't ready for use in A/B testing. So maybe talk us through about that process or your experiences in that regard.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Thanks for the question. So I think that's a great question. And when we think about administrative data, the kind of mother load of administrative data, of course, is sitting not with NGOs or edtechs or whatever, but in government data systems. And so, of course, like the efforts to link up those data systems and introduce kind of like experimental variation within government services to then make the data meaningful, that's, I think, the hard part. For some years now, we've had an initiative where we set up what we call embedded labs. So staff that are sitting within a government ministry. This first started with the Ministry of Education in Peru, but we've now expanded that to more than a dozen other countries across different ministries. And they always follow the same kind of few-step plan. And it relates to what I was saying before, which is they look for the pockets of good data. So where is there data that's available that provides an opportunity to demonstrate the value of testing? And in fact, this is actually what we've also done here in Australia with the like nudge units or behavioural insights units that we have that are often testing, you know, fairly small scale, cheap tweaks to different government programs that can demonstrate the value of experimentation. And then over time, I think that builds the case for then strengthening the data systems that can allow you to do experimentation on more meaningful outcomes like, you know, student learning outcomes that I know, for instance, is in fact like the priority in the Philippines right now, strengthening that data set. So, and then maybe, you know, the universe of potential experimentation options opens up.
Great, thanks so much for all of the questions and engagement. I don't usually give out a best slide award, but I loved the slide on James Blunt and I'm definitely going to steal it. So I'm going to give a special shout out to Ben for that one. I found this a tremendously stimulating session. I think it's a bit of a call to arms for all of us. There's a lot of potential here. It does involve a bit of upfront work, I think, is one of the messages I've taken away, especially in relation to thinking about the right metrics. This idea of what's the gold metric that will be can be collected soon enough to be able to get results in time to make decisions, but which is closely enough connected to the longer term outcomes we're interested in. So there can be a bit of setup work to find that. Once you've got that set up, once you've got the infrastructure set up to randomise, then you're off to the races. That's something that we can all continue to sort of promote and explore opportunities for, I think, in our work. And I appreciate Azeez, Ben and Claire for giving us that call to arms. Let me also finally just ask you, as well as thanking our panellists, to thank Sam, our tech operator, who's done a fabulous job over on the side, often not sufficiently appreciated. So thanks very much to our panellists, and thank you to our guests. I hope you enjoyed the session as much as I did. Thank you.